See that bag I is carrying? That's for me. 175 DVDs of upcoming movies, rarities, box sets, live concerts, and as they like to call it in this country, blue movies. I sell them to the pirates in England, from which they can make duplicates and sell them all the way from Camden Town to Wembley Market. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
As of 12 p.m. today, police have swept the nation, closing down and arresting any and every outlet selling pirated goods.
You owe me, boy, and you're going to pay. If it's a merchandise, money or flesh and blood, I will get what's due me.
Tits.
Ask yourself this question. How far are you willing to go to make your dreams come true? What would you do? What's it worth?
Every bloody penny. It's a fact, there's no denying it. Piracy is good. I need a favor.
Yo, what's up, G-Dog?
I need DVDs.
Lah, ni murah je, sini piu-piu balu-balu. Ini garanti clear punya. Kalau tak clear, you bawa balik sini.
Yeah! Oh, you don't mind if I change you?
Oh, I'm sorry, should I just step out?
You can stand real well on the future.
Putri!
Wow, you are having a bad day.
I'm Patrick Lim and I'm a first-time entrepreneur. I founded a company manufacturing and designing urban city bags here in Malaysia. And because I was new to business, I had tons of questions and challenges that needed answers. I started talking with veteran entrepreneurs and they would tell me these great origin stories of theirs. On this show, we talk to entrepreneurs about how they brought their crazy ideas to life. We get to hear their stories of adventure and challenges, and how they started from zero to hero. Okay, how you doing, man? Pretty good, pretty good. So, Khairil, before we talk about Checkered Past, let's talk about yourself. Let's talk about, how you came about and
how I came about, like in filmmaking.
Yeah, in filmmaking. I mean, what were you doing in the past? I mean, what was your past like?
I never went to film school.
Mm-hmm.
I actually studied economics and philosophy. So I have a useless degree at the moment, which I have no...
Useless
It's useless, now. Man. I mean, I can't remember anything. I was trying to draw a demand and supply curve the other day. I couldn't remember how... I was like, I know it's an X, but which one's D and which one's S? I just couldn't remember. So I came back to Malaysia. I was studying in England at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in England for most of my life. And I'd always been fascinated with film, but it's kind of... we're all Asians, an Asian upbringing, and it's totally understandable. Parents want you to, have a good job, stability, and all that.
Yeah.
So, of course, I ended up doing economics, and philosophy was just like, okay, maybe this will be fun. And then I later realized this is painful.
So economics was not your choice. It was something that as a youth.
Oh shit! I mean, it's more of like. There's like that ingrained belief that like, okay, as much as I would love to be a filmmaker or this or that, let's be realistic here. How many, yes, Hollywood, there's those people, and then Hong Kong, yeah, you have that. I mean, how many, Malaysian directors are there that are really making a name for themselves? And this was back in, when I was growing up, late 80s, early 90s. But I'd always read up about it, all these independent filmmakers, especially in the 90s when you had people like Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith, who's I'm a huge fan of. But I always read up about it, and then psych myself up like, okay, no, I could do this. I actually found some old notebooks where I was budgeting how to shoot a short film on Super 8, because you could still find Super 8 cameras and film and all that.
You still can find it now?
Now it's tough, but you can still find it. You know, and I went back to England the other day. It was really tough because now they kind of realize the value of it.
Yeah.
But at that time, you could find. Actually, in my university years, I bought a Super 8 camera for £15 and a projector for £30. You know, and a roll of film was about £15, including developing. You know, so and just tested it out. It looks great, but I found this old notepad from when I was 16, like trying to budget this short film idea I had, and then I'd always just like, you know what, what's the point? But I'd still shoot stuff. I'd have my mom's video camera, and I've got all these little short films which are terrible. I used to edit. This is back in the days of tape, you know, before there was. I had a PC, but this is back in the days where like my PC has a 1 gigabyte hard drive.
Yeah. So.
Oh my god. You know,
so Movie Maker was not even.
No,
this
was back when was it 95, Windows 95? Yeah, it was Windows 95, where every PC came with like, look, you can play Weezer's Buddy Holly music video, like that big on the screen. Which I would use to write scripts, but I'd always edit. I'd shoot on VHS-C, which is like that small tape,
right?
And I'd have 2 VHS players, and that's how I'd edit. I'd play back from one. And then, you know, like you find the clip that you want, press record on one, and then pause it, and you find the next clip.
How old were you when you were doing this?
I was between 14 to 16, around that time, between 14 to 16. That's when I started figuring out.
How do you learn how to do that? How to edit?
I just read up, you know. At that point, one of the main influences was Robert Rodriguez, because he edited El Mariachi on tape, even though he shot on film.
Right.
You know, and reading his diary. You'd see like that he used to, that's how he would edit, you know, you get one video deck and another video deck. So once you understand the concept, I just started looking around. I had this old, you know, those really old VHS players where it's a top loading one. You press the button, it goes ka-chonk like that. So I'd have one of those, and then the one that my parents had rented for the house. And I also had the video camera as well. And I'd loop that in, I'd try and find the points where I'd cut here and then play here. And all that, and then I would take that tape and then run it through again and make a master, and then I'd have a keyboard hooked up, I had a little mixer, and then I put in all my sound effects and the music. I'd have a CD player hooked up. And
that's rather technical for someone has got economics background.
I know
I mean, when you were like 14 to 16, you're not even in university yet.
Well, true, but it's or
college, sorry.
Yeah, the mid '90s was. You know, that period when it was like that gap in technology was bridging. You know, young people were figuring out how to use all this technology. So it's stuff that I always wanted to learn, but I didn't get to learn. But this was the time when, number one, you had all these independent films coming out, and then you had the internet was just starting up. So suddenly you had a whole wealth of knowledge. Of course, this was back in the days when it was like a HTML website, and there's like the animated GIFs of, you know, like, you know, how many people have entered the site and smiley faces and all that crap. But you'd find all this information. That's how I learned guitar, and that's how I learned filmmaking, from the internet. And that's how I learned how to figure that out.
And these were like before YouTube.
Way before YouTube. And even then, the editing, before I figured out how to edit, I was figuring out how to pirate. Because I realized I had 2 VHS players. I'd never have time. I'd want to rent movies, but I'd never have time to watch them.
It, yeah. That's what I used to do as well.
Yeah, so you'd rent one tape, copy it to another tape, and then I'd send the tape back, and like, I can watch Hard Target another time.
So was that the reason why you came up with the inspiration of Ciplak?
Ciplak is like similar but close. I'll get to Ciplak.
All right, we'll get to that.
But I mean, that was my film school in a sense, because when you're learning like that. See, the thing with I don't know if it was for other VHS players, but usually with the VHS player, if you press pause, it'll only pause for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it will just stop.
Yeah.
You know, so if you can't find the clip at the right time,
you're screwed.
That's it. So you learn how to pre-edit when you're shooting.
In your mind, you're like,
okay, I'll shoot this, and then right after shoot this, I'll shoot this. So that way, when I'm editing, I can forward it straight to there.
Right.
As opposed to like looking, maybe this clip. You know, you pre-edit, so by the time you put it there, you can quickly go, okay, and the next one is this one. Okay, play, record, and you figure out it would train you to think in that way. Hang on, is that recording? Yeah, just realized.
So what were your parents thinking about that?
They didn't know.
They didn't know.
They didn't know. They really.
You were doing this in secrecy.
I was. Well, it was kind of like I wouldn't say ashamed, but I felt shy about showing my parents
right your work.
This work, because number one, it wasn't that good.
Okay.
And number two, all parents have that thing of like, oh, the relatives are here, do that dance that you do, show them what breakdancing is. And then I didn't want to be, look at this little kung fu movie, and I'd just be there, and knowing that they're not admiring it, they're just laughing at, look at this child thinking he's Bruce Lee. So no, I never showed them. What my parents knew was that I would use the video camera whenever my mom had events or there were family events. I would shoot it. I'd always be the one with the video camera. And then I'd cut something for them, but they never saw like my short films.
It never occurred to them that this was professionally edited.
Oh, it wasn't. I managed to find an old VHS recorder, and I transferred some of my old short films. I'm watching them. My God! But that's the cool thing, because
you're a kid.
And when you start learning, your first stuff is going to be crap.
Yeah.
Regardless, because you're still learning how to use the stuff.
Right.
So better I get all that stuff out of the way before I'm an adult. So then when I'm an adult, I can shoot stuff.
Right.
And that was mainly, when I was a teenager in high school. Second, I went to A-level college and university onwards. The bug was still there, but I never actually did anything after that because I didn't have the video camera with me. I never felt the need to. What I did in university was during GCSEs as well, was I got involved in theatre. Because to me, I was like, this is the closest thing to an academic thing in the school, which is similar to film. The only thing missing is the technical stuff, but acting, directing, writing, all of that was there. And a lot of things helped prep me for it. Like when I was in GCSEs, between that age, 14 to 16, my English teacher realized that, because I wasn't handing in my courseworks at all for English language, but she noticed that I like writing scripts.
Okay.
So she let me hand in all the papers that were due as a script. Okay, this was the subject you were supposed to write about, this as prose. No, it was handed in as a screenplay. So, and that was huge practice, because with writing as well, the only way you learn how to write is to write.
Yes.
So a lot of the early, pitfalls of writing, I managed to get out of my system at a very early age. And by the time I reached university, it was, whilst I was studying economics and philosophy, there was a student union drama society, which I ended up spending more time in than actually. I did not go to lectures at all. Every time I came back every year, the other students were like, you're still here? They haven't kicked you out? Because if there's one thing I knew how to do is write. So I would pick all the topics where, you argue a case as opposed to needing fact. And if you broke down those essays, maybe 500 words are actual fact, and the other 1,500 is pure bullshit that I'm just spouting off. Like, I'm padding this out so that I've got 2,000 words. And that's how I got my degree. That's why you just need to learn how to bullshit and you'll get a degree. But I would spend a lot of time in my drama society, so that helped my writing and learning how to act more. And then when I came back to Malaysia, it kind of felt like, okay, well, maybe that was just a kid's thing. That was a dream when I was a kid, and now I've got to get a job. So I was in corporate communications for a while, and then I switched over and became a copywriter. And my main creative outlet at the time was music. I was in a bunch of bands, and then I think I was doing it on portfolio, so I should know the year, 2004, when I did my first short film. And that was now that I was in a job, a steady enough job as a copywriter. And one thing people don't realize, copywriters have a lot of downtime. We spend as much time as the graphic designers in the office, but whilst the graphic designers, like, their eyes are burning, the copywriter's just like, I just need to sign off this copy, what am I going to do?
Inspiration, motivation.
So it's just, I'm not like, I'd say like 10% of my time as a copywriter was spent actually writing copy. 50% was, I would say like 45% was spent brainstorming, the other 45% was spent waiting. you know. So there was a lot of time I'd be writing on my blog, and I had enough money to buy a small video camera, and I'd been trying out little editing softwares like Windows Movie Maker and this and that. And then it was the Club Cine Film Malaysia's Malaysian short series, which was curated at the time by Amir Muhammad and Bernard Chorley. And it was just completely on a whim. Before that, the thing that gave me the bug again was a short film. This is where it all started again in Malaysia, actually. I could trace it all back to this one point. Where it all started again was a friend of mine named Tony Pietra was wanted to make a short film. This was a dude he is a complete cineast. He went to film school. You go into his room and it's like hallways of DVDs, laser discs, VHS, label, everything is pristine, you know. Now he's gone into Blu-ray, right. So you know he's rebuilding his collection again.
Wow.
And very few pirated copies as well, might I add. You know, he buys the originals, he searches for the originals. And he was making a short film, so my friend recommended me to act in it. And it was acting in that and looking at everyone shooting it and seeing how everything was being done. The process and all that. Yeah, the bug started again because it was like, it's just like 1-2 lights and that camera. Okay.
Yeah, I can do this.
Yeah. So then 2004 came around. I already had the small video camera which I'd been fooling around with to shoot my gigs. And it was literally, I saw the notice for call of entries for the KSFM Malaysia shorts on a Thursday. And the deadline was Monday. Right? And so I thought, okay, I've got nothing to do this weekend. So there's a script that I'd always been thinking about writing about trying to quit smoking, about a character who's trying to quit smoking, which later on became that short film, Nicotine. So I wrote it on Friday at work between waiting and called up some friends, seeing who's free, shot it on Saturday, and then edited it and wrote the music for it on Sunday, and then handed it on a Monday. By that point, a friend of mine had shown me how to use Sony Vegas. No, it wasn't even owned by Sony back then. Vegas 3. Right. And I was using that to edit. Still very new at it, but I could figure out. You already understand the basics of editing. Yeah, so you're just trying to. And Vegas is very easy to understand. And handed it in, and it was accepted. And that was the first short film that I ever did that was screened publicly, which was nerve-wracking. Because I'm there, and these people that I heard about, like Amir Muhammad's there, Bernard Chorley's there, James Lee was showing a film of his, all these other guys were showing short films. You're just
nobody.
Yeah, and then on top of that, everyone else's short films were so full of artistic merit. Right. You know, they were films where like real deep meanings that I was like, I'm too stupid to understand these short films because I don't get it. I was brought up on Back to the Future and Star Wars. Yes. You know, I don't understand these films. What's going on? I'm probably an idiot, you know, and that was a really good experience because people reacted. The main thing, I started off with doing, like Nicotine, there are funny moments, and there's also a very serious moment, which has kind of been my thing ever since, to combine humor with serious moments as well. And the thing with comedy is that you can instantly know if people are enjoying it or not by simply listening to whether they laugh. So that was the most cringeworthy thing, like you're waiting, are they going to laugh at this joke? Are they going to laugh? And they laughed, and I was like, oh shit, it works. You know? This works. And then that went on to go to the Singapore International Film Festival. It didn't win anything. I think it was just shown as a series of films. And it kind of started off from there. Went on to shoot Some Like It White the next year with this new camera that I bought that I was intending to shoot my first feature film with, which wasn't going to be Ciplak. It was actually going to be a film called Ciplak. Love story, like a teen love story. And then my producer left me in the lurch, which left a bad taste in me for producers for a long time, which is why for a good period I did everything by myself. Sure. But it was because of that experience that I shot Ciplak. Because Ciplak originally was a 10-minute short film called VCD. That's how old it was written. It was before DVDs were pirated. It's called VCD. And it was just this idea of like someone going through all the different, different pirated qualities of discs, because you start noticing it like, oh, this copy is a cinema copy, or this is a cinema copy, but they got it on a tripod. This is a DVD copy. It's got the subtitles underneath, but it's got this symbol that keeps going up and down. You know, the covers were just brilliantly photoshopped. I wish I'd kept all of them, because I know somewhere I used to have like, it was a movie that, it was something like Love Actually, and people put guns everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, just to like, look, it's action. Or, you know, like the love stories.
When there's guns, that it will sell. Or if there's monsters, it will sell.
Or like
Big giant shark.
Yeah, Made in Manhattan, which is Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah.
But then they put like hot FHM shoot of Jennifer Lopez. Like, look, there's gonna be tits in this. And that fascinated me, so I wrote this short film, because I thought, how cool it would be as someone's explaining all these different things. Those things are happening in the short film. And it was from there I wrote that, and I went back at it, and I'm like, this story can go on. And then I started basing it around my own experiences. Because what I would do, one thing I noticed from a very early age, like around 16 onwards, is that movies that came out in England at that time, they had a delay between America and England. You know, a movie would come out in America first, and then 2-3 months later it would go to international territories. Now, what the pirates would do though is that they got the movies from America. You know, that's how they got their pirated stuff from. So I would realize then that I had copies of movies when I went back to Malaysia that were still 2-3 months away in England. So that's what I do. I'd always, every time I came back to Malaysia, I'd buy a ton of movies, you know, so that me and my friends could watch all these movies before they came out.
Ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. So I watched Matrix 6 months before it came out in England, which was hilarious because it was actually not a full edit.
Right.
All the music wasn't in there, which made it a really dark film. So when after that, I was like, we're definitely watching this in the cinema as well, because it was a bad copy, but it's just cool. Then you watch it in the cinema, I was like, there's a Rage Against the Machine song in this. Now the movie's really cool, but it looked like this dark drama,
right?
Sci-fi drama, like Blade Runner, and now it's a manga movie. Wow. And that made me think, okay, well, what if some guy who's doing the same thing, studying in England, except he takes these copies and he sells them to the pirates in England, so that they can have their master copies, because there is piracy in England. It's just much harder to find. It's not out in the open like a...
Sure, not like ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I combined that with my passions as well, wanting to be a filmmaker, and my fears of coming back to Malaysia because I'd lived in England for so long. And that's how I wrote that movie. And that was the movie that gave me a career, because I didn't intend for that movie to be released. Chiluk, I had every intention of it being released. And then I thought, to the point where I even approached Jaludin Hassan to play a small role. And then with Ciplak, I was like, you know what? It was one of those things. It's I have this thing where I set myself very short-term specific goals, just in order that I have something to aim to. You know, so at that time, it was my very short-term specific goals were to make a movie, to record an album. And that was it, you know? And it's not like make a movie so that it gets released or anything. No, it's just flat out just make a movie. Because then your focus is very, very targeted towards just the process of it.
You're not even thinking about it as a business or a career or whatsoever.
Not at all. Just, I figured it was just something like, I've been dreaming about this for so long. I need to get this out of my system and shoot this. I'll shoot it with a bunch of my friends. Maybe I can send it to some festivals, but at the most we'll probably sit down and watch it and enjoy ourselves every once in a while, and it's not going to go any further than that. I'm happy with that. Maybe I can screen it at Help or something like that once or twice, and I'm done. You know, I don't need to build a career out of it. And that's how I approached it. So it's still one of my most honest movies, because the whole process was so pure. You're not thinking about, oh, will audiences react to this? Will festivals want to accept this? Will this or that? You're not thinking about that.
But were you already thinking about how to get this movie distributed?
None.
So you just...
I literally just shot it.
Just shoot it?
Shot it for the sake of it. I thought at the most...
How do you get it out?
I was gonna... To me, I was looking at it the same way I was looking at gigs. I was like, I'll shoot it, and then, you know, I'll show it in this venue, I'll show it in that venue, I'll bring a projector, I'm done. Right. You know? It'll just be like this small fringe thing, you know, and I figured I'll be able to show that, you know, and at least get some reactions on that. At the same time, I'll just work my job as a copywriter. What happened, though, was I showed it at this old venue called Paul's Place in Old Klang Road, which my band is now taken over as our own studio. I showed it there for friends, family, cast members, all of that, like a private screening. Just for the sake of it, you know. It was a party. There was food downstairs. There was screening. I brought some press as well. I was just like, okay, let's see what press turned up. And one of the guys that was there was, this is how things all come around. One of the guys that was there was the writer of the short film that Tony Pietro was doing. Did all those years ago, named Alan Quay, who also wrote for The Star. And I was actually very, very nervous about inviting him because I've seen him rip local films to shreds. You know, he's one of the few journalists who would actually like, if it is shit, I will say it is shit. You know, whereas a lot of journalists just feel that, you know, it's like, it's a bit not nice, you know, we're a budding industry, which I totally get as well.
Right.
But you got to give props to a guy who's just like, fuck it. You know, this movie sucks the balls of a dead dog. He doesn't write like that, obviously. He has much better journalistic integrity than that. But
with finesse.
Yeah, but I was freaked. I was scared because, you know, this is a guy who his opinions are very, very strong.
He could destroy it.
It's not that he could destroy it. It's just more of a personal thing. Because to me, I look at things very personally, and I don't.
Right.
I didn't
you spend so much time and effort, you know, passion.
I didn't want a friend of
and
mine to think it was shit.
Right.
You know, I want at the very least it'll enjoy it. Like, I know this guy, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Hey, that's my friend. And he really dug it. And he asked if he could pass my contact over to GSC. To show us, oh, sure. You know, I didn't expect anything out of it because I had no idea how the distribution process worked. You know, I didn't know there was this thing called the international screens, which shows, you know, some indie flicks.
Yeah.
And they watched it and they dug it and they released it. You know, and it was released in November 2006. It was originally supposed to be released in August, but there were some complications there. But that's why the poster is designed that way, because Pirates of the Caribbean 2 came out in August.
Right.
So I figured, like, I can't compete with Pirates of the Caribbean. So what if this poster, if this was next to Pirates of the Caribbean with the pirate's trunk and everything, you know, and then the tagline is like a different kind of pirates. You're like, oh. Then it came out in November, and the poster, like, I don't get it. But it's still a cool poster. I love it. That's why I'm not going to change it just because we're getting a movie change date. And that came out.
It might work if you just call it Lanun. Change the title to Lanun, right? Or something like that.
But yeah, it went from there, and then I got a call asking...
Pirates of Chowkit Road.
There's a Chowkit movie coming out as well, I just saw.
Yeah.
And somehow it ended up winning the Anugerah Screen in 2006 as well. And that was the point where I was like, okay, should I continue doing my dual life, or should I just try and concentrate on it and just, you know, take a chance? And I decided to take a chance, you know, because especially also for the Anugerah Screen, I think that was the first moment where in my parents' eyes, it's like, I think he's got something here. Because especially at the Anugerah Screen, these are, a lot of the celebrities that are there are people that, you know, they have a frame of reference on, you know, local actors and actresses from the, you know, predominantly Malay film and television market. And these are people that they know, they've watched and admired. And to see their son getting an award in the same stature as them, you know, with Era Fazira gave me an award, you know, they're like, oh, maybe there's something here. Of course, they still gave me crap for it for a couple of years after that. But I think that was the first point where
what happened to the UK? What happened to the economics?
Oh, it's one of those things you can't break. I've only managed to break it now.
Right.
You know, now it's literally like, now is the first time where, after Relationship Status came out, when my mom's no longer telling me that. She's instead going, have you watched Relationship Status? Have you watched Relationship Status? I'm like, Mom, I still feel like the kid, like, Mom, please stop embarrassing me. She announced it at one of the restaurants in Taman Tun. I just met them up for tea. And then there was a karaoke thing there, and then she's singing, oh, by the way, that's my son, and his movie Relationship Status is out, and you should all go watch it. It's showing in these cinemas. I'm like, alamak. And then I look up on Twitter, and someone's like, at Kaimano's mom just got up at his restaurant to announce hashtag Relationship Status. I was like, oh, God. But, you know, it's better than her going like, you know, you should be a doctor. We're like, how am I going to be a doctor now? I much prefer being embarrassed by her like that than being bugged by her and other things. You know, it didn't take too long, only about 10 years.
So you went about working on Ciplak without realizing that you were working on a possible gold mine.
It wasn't really a gold mine.
Or at least a career.
It was a foot in the door, and that's about it. You know, the box office for Ciplak, it didn't even cover the cost of the camera.
Right.
You know, it's not the net, not the gross, nothing. You know, but what it did was get my foot in the door. And that's when I found out that, which is quite sad, but just on the name itself, a lot of doors open. And these doors are open with people who had never watched the movie. They just read articles. You know, it was very confusing for me because they called me up for interviews and pitch meetings, and they'd never seen my movie. It always kind of confused me, like, why, if you haven't seen my work, why do you want to work with me? Oh, because there's a buzz around you. Sometimes buzz is all you need, but buzz dissipates pretty damn quickly.
Yeah.
You know? And at that point, this is the dark act too. After the undergrad screen, I actually started another company with my friend and bandmate at the time for a recording studio and record label. And I figured I could do my filmmaking stuff inside this company as well. I can have a film arm. And I spent a good year and a half, almost 2 years of my life on that. And needless to say, long story short, it wasn't a business that was working. And there were issues with myself and my business partner, which also ruined our friendship.
Oh, okay.
And obviously, like, working in the company as well. And that really, you know, because I'm the type of character, like, there are people who can just switch that stuff off. It's business is business, but I'm very emotionally attuned.
Right. Okay.
So that affected me quite a bit as well. Gave me huge trust issues as well with working with other people even. But the main thing on that was that, you know, it was a very huge lesson. I look back and it's a very, very huge lesson on starting up a business, on starting a business by yourself, on picking the right partner. You know, it's kind of like, you know how they say, like, there are some friends that can be your best friend, but you can never live with. Yeah. And then it's the same thing. Some people can be your best friend, but you can never work with, because it's a different side of them that maybe you cannot, you know, hang out with. Maybe you cannot work with. It's a different personality. So I try and keep that. It's hopefully I like to be able to have people that are both friends and people I can work with. But if there are people that I can't work with, then we'll just maintain it as friends, you know? And that was one of the things. I mean, number one was that. Number two was to realize that business is business. You really have to have everything sorted out and checked out. Otherwise, you might get cheated. And as well as, like, to have that business frame of mind at times, which every once in a while I forget because I prefer to run things based on trust. I'd like to think that, you know, there are people out there that you can trust. The sad fact of the matter is there are a lot of cheaters out there. There are a lot of people out there who will not think twice about doing something that you would never think about for the sake of business. And it's stuff that to this day, I sometimes, like, even recently the crap has happened, and sometimes it's really made me wonder, is that how you're supposed to make it ahead in business? Is that how all these great people who have these huge companies, is that how you get ahead? You know, can you not get ahead based on talent and merit and integrity? And every once in a while that thought creeps up, but I always try and tell myself, like, no, you know what? Screw those guys. You know, trust in what you're doing, because as much as you've met really terrible people down the road, you've also met some incredible people who have your back to this day. Yeah. And it's like, it's a give and take. You know, I guess I'm just very bad at judging character off the bat. You know, because there's some people where I'm like, how did I not see that coming? I mean, seriously, this guy took me for a ride. How did I not see this? And that kind of kills you as well. Because how you start blaming yourself a lot, and it's tough. It's very, very tough. But you know, that's unfortunately part and parcel with business.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why after that, that's when I started Checkered Past, which is still predominantly it started off as predominantly me. I wanted to go solo, but I wanted to put it under a brand name, you know. And the thing is that one thing I realized as well is that there were jobs that I could get under Checkered Past, and there were jobs that I get freelance as Khairil M Bahar, you know. So it became a big question because branding is always a really weird issue. And at that point, I didn't want to brand myself. I didn't like the idea of branding myself. That's why I wanted to park it under a company. Now, in comparison to now I definitely see the merit in branding myself. You know, there was always that fear as well because like, oh my god, this is narcissistic. Khairil M Bahar, the brand? Are you fucking kidding me? You know? But now I'm like, you know what? It is what it is. It is what it freaking is. So the only thing I can do is be a bit more honest about it than other people who are just like tweeting constantly like, hey, help us out and give us more likes and hits and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh. That's what I didn't want to be, you know? That's why I tried when I was like, please come to the event. Please. I'll suck your dick, you know? So at least people are like, okay, he's not that serious about it. He's not that much of an asshole. He's going to constantly bug me with crap. You know, that's what I try and do now. So there's myself, and then there's the company as well. And I feel more comfortable with the company now because I do have a core team, which I always work with. So there's always stuff where I'm working within the company, and then other times a company hires myself and maybe my production manager or whichever. And it's nothing where nobody's tied down to the company. We're all in essence freelancers who sometimes when we have a project under this, we park it under that.
Right.
You know? Like sometimes, like my production manager, for example, she's a freelancer and sometimes she has jobs which aren't going to be parked under that. They're her own jobs, but she'll hire me. So it works out either way. And that way everybody's open and free to do their own thing because this is essentially freelancing. You know, it's just with a company name to back it up every once in a while. And one thing about freelancing is like, especially at the early stages, you don't want to give up a gig. You know, I'm at the stage right now when I want to try and give up gigs because it gets frustrating at times. But that, you know, like the first 2 years, my first year when I started this up, out of a year, I maybe worked 5-6 months. Now, freelancing it's scary. Because going at it yourself as a company or freelance and everything like that without any job security is very, very scary. My first year, probably out of the year, I worked 5-6 months of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 4. You know, very, very.
You were out of the copyright job. It's
long gone.
Long gone.
You know, I was just trying to, you know, concentrate on just being a filmmaker. And the problem was because I'd spent already like a good year or two more on the recording studio, that buzz that had built up from Ciplak had kind of dissipated. And a lot of those doors were now closed. I think I probably only worked about 5 months in that first year. And a good 2.5 months was spent on this atrocious TV series. Terrible, terrible TV series. And then the year after that, still about maybe 7 months of work, 6-7 months. And then when 15 Malaysia happened, that's when everything picked up, you know? Because one thing about me, I am terrible at sourcing and pleasing clients. I'm just terrible. It's one of those things where I accept it as a fault. People say, well, you need to learn it. Well, now I don't because I have friends who could do it for me. So, because like there was once, I remember I haven't gotten a job from them anymore because I couldn't hide it. There was a point, the client actually turned to me and said, could you please not look at me like you want to kill me? And I couldn't reply. I was like... Because everything they were saying, all the comments they were saying were just fucking ridiculous. You know, it's like, it's either I look at you like this, or I tell you that you're a dumb bitch. Which would you prefer? You know? Because it was just inane, and it was killing me. But on 50 Malaysia, you know, it wasn't really the buzz that helped, but it was more the experience of going to Busan. For the Busan International Film Festival with a bunch of the other filmmakers. And because in that experience, what happened was I managed to reconnect with an old friend of mine from A-level college, Jordan Sulaiman from the Sulaiman brothers. They did the short film Rojak for 50 Malaysia, the animated one. And I got to finally meet Benji and Bahir, who worked on Scully, which came out the same year as Ciplak. Ciplak and Scully were like the low-budget indie flicks that are popping out that year. And I'd always heard about them, and I never met them. You know, I just looked from a distance at their blog with this whole sense of jealousy, because I'd be like, they're shooting on HD. They're editing on a Mac G4. God damn it, I'm using this shitty-ass Pentium single-core chip. And I finally got to meet them. And it was through meeting them that the years onwards started managing to get jobs, because we enjoyed each other's company and we wanted to work with each other. And then it's through those connections that I met other people like Sandy, who's ended up becoming like my PM on everything these days. And it started branching out like that. And it was from there that I no longer had to be going to companies, hey man, you need a corporate video? I'll suck your dick. And I didn't have to do that anymore, because like I got someone else to do that. Because, you know, I get a call from Bahar like, hey, we got this job, we need an editor, could you help edit it? Okay. You know? Or John will call, hey, I've got this corporate video, I need someone to help me shoot it with the crew. Yeah, okay. You know, so, and we were all just helping each other. When I need animation, I'll call up Jordan. If I needed something else, call them up. Or we'd all just call up each other and help each other out. And that's what helped getting jobs, because there was a huge jump from then on. You know, I always tell people that I've got some friends who are going into freelancing, I always tell them, you need a minimum of 3 decent hookups. You have those hookups and you should be okay. The toughest part though is getting those 3. Yeah. You know, either there are 3 main clients or 3 people that you can work with who get clients, whatever. You know, if you just have one, then you're relying on one person, and then you're kind of stuck there. You know, you have 3, it's kind of spread out. You even have the option to say no sometimes. It's just getting those 3, and those first few years are the toughest, because it really it really challenges you, you know, in terms of thinking, should I bother? You know, it's like you start thinking, well, I could get a job and then I could do some of this part-time, you know, but then certain jobs you can't take. And, you know, at some points I would consider maybe I should just go back to being a copywriter again. But the main thing that helped me leave copywriting was that I loved the job, I just hated the clients. Which is kind of silly, because now I was in a situation where I love this job, but I hate these fucking clients. I can't get away from it. You know, idiot clients are going to chase me wherever I am. But that's how.
But it brings in the money, so
it does. But it's like
it's a little bit more consistent than, you know, how you would if you were to shoot a feature.
It is. But here's the thing: like back then, and now that I look back at it, I was getting paid pretty low for a copywriter, you know. And other things that helped was I was hoping for a raise and that didn't happen, or a promotion and that didn't happen, or a bonus. What happened once the ball really started rolling after 2 years, I know that I was making decent money, because all this equipment that you see here, none of it existed like 3 years ago, you know. It was literally that monitor, that keyboard, and that old PC on that side, which is an i5. And that was it. That was my entire editing system. You know, 1 camera. That was about it. In fact, there was a good period where I had to rent cameras, because I only had a standard definition camcorder. You know? So now I'm like looking at everything like there's an iMac over there, there's an iPad, MIDI keyboard, 2 monitors over there, an i7 and an i5 for my interns. Lighting. It's all that built up, and this is all stuff that with each job, I'd spend an amount on equipment, so that in the future, you know, I don't have to rent, and also I'll be able to shoot something on my own, which led up to relationship status. By the time I wanted to shoot relationship status, I was comfortable enough to be like, okay, you have enough basic equipment to shoot a movie, and I can afford to not take jobs for about 2 months, which will give me enough time to shoot this. And that's what we did.
So why do you want to do relationship status when, you know, your production house is already making money with all these corporate videos and all those other things?
Because, you know, it's like making corporate videos is all well and good, but, you know, I've always felt first and foremost that I was a writer. I can't tell stories with them. You know, half the time
you can tell their stories, but you can't tell
half
yours.
the time I can't even tell their stories. They're giving me a script, and I'm like, you guys are retarded, but you paid me, so okay. You know, and there's stories that sometimes you just want to tell. You know, and also let's not forget the main thing above all else why I am a filmmaker is because it's fun. You know, and there's nothing more fun than being out with a bunch of like-minded people and shooting something just for the sake of shooting it. You know, where no one is telling you like, oh, you need to include a scene with this actor because this actor is very prominent for our demographic. Right. You know, which is essentially the same as doing a corporate video and someone saying, we really need to show more of our product because our product is very important, da, 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 da. You know, I know we said we didn't want to do a hard sell, but screw you, you're being paid by us. It's the same thing. Like, Relationship Status was my release. Every couple of months or a couple of years, I do something that's very obviously just a release from all that. You know, something that's done purely for fun. And Relationship Status was one of those things. And it was a script that, by that point, before Relationship Status, I had kind of lost interest in writing because I felt like I had no stories to tell. You know, it was like, after Ciplak, I was like, well, I've told the story that I've always wanted to tell.
Now what?
Yeah, what story am I going to tell now? The story about a guy who runs a recording studio? It's like, what? No. And I'd also, because I'd worked in TV for a bit, writing and directing, I suddenly started thinking like that. In terms of like, you'd write halfway like, will the audience understand this? Will the demographic? And what is my demographic? What language should I write it in? All those things are getting to your head. And that is stuff that just hampers creativity. You know, let the business people figure that out. You know? If you're writing something just for the sake of writing, just fucking write it. Yeah. And Relationship Status was one of those pieces. I'd gone back into theater just as a creative release because filmmaking had been corporate videos, which wasn't much of a creative release. It was pretty much work, but it was work that I enjoyed doing to an extent. So I was back into theater, which I hadn't done for a good, at that point, 10 years. And that was an incredibly good creative release because it pumped up my juices again and helped me write again. Especially this one play, Lost and Found, which was a collaborative play. All the actors had to write, and all based on personal experiences. And that's what helped me write. And it was from there that, because that made me realize I'd always stopped myself from writing certain things because, oh, no one's going to understand this. Bullshit. You know? From writing all those things, I just realized, you know what? Someone will dig it. Whatever you're writing, there's someone out there who might enjoy it. There are incredibly bad filmmakers out there. Incredibly bad writers out there, but someone enjoys it. Yeah. You know? I might think it's shit, but there could be like 20,000 people in the world who think this is the best thing ever. You know? So just write it. And Relationship Status was written because finally I did have a story to tell. You know? I had a pretty big story that I wanted to tell. And it was at a point where I was comfortable in telling it. So that's why I decided, okay, Relationship Status. And it's also right now how I want to go about things as well, is to be doing more creative stuff. To try and see whether income can be generated from the creative stuff, because that is the position that I would like to be in.
So do you make good money with Relationship Status?
Well, it's not like I'm like blinging it or anything. That car outside isn't even mine. You know, my parents are away, so I got to take care of crap.
You got a car.
I got a, second their bags. Like, okay, I'm back in my Kalisa, which I love. You know, everyone keeps telling me, sell your Kalisa. I'm like, no. She can park in places no one else can, so screw you all. I can't even fit this car in my driveway. But, no, Relationship Status, the box office wasn't great, but that was an experiment to see whether or not we can distribute something ourselves. And I can tell you definitely the box office, it beat the Ciplak box office in the first 2 days. 2-3 days, you know. Before the opening weekend was complete, it had already beaten the gross on Ciplak easily.
So how is movie business like here in Malaysia as compared with the rest of other countries? I mean, we're talking about Hollywood, right? They're producing movies after movies because it generates revenue, right? Whereas for us,
and we are actually getting to that right now. It's different yet the same. You have to understand, like, from what I've seen, studios in Malaysia in general are following the same studio template as Hollywood, you know, which is very much based on statistics and market research and all of that. The main difference, in my opinion, is the fact that in Hollywood, the basis the pure basics of plot devices, script writing, all of that is set in stone. You know, it is completely set in stone. It is very difficult to write a badly written script. I'm not saying that Hollywood doesn't write bad scripts. There are a ton of bad scripts, but a badly written script, you know, a script where you're like, I don't understand what's going on. Sharktopus. I was like, how can you? It's a shark, which is an octopus. You know, they can take that and they can make that. You know, it is B grade as hell, but you can watch it and you can understand the plot pretty much. There's a so and so. The fuck is that? There's so and so. There's the sharktopus. It was created because of this. Now it's killing people, and someone's going to save everyone. You know. Whereas in Malaysia, that basis is kind of being lost. You know, which is coming back now. But there was a long period where I wouldn't watch local films simply because after 15 minutes, I'd be like, "What is this movie about?" I'm not really sure.
But do you see there is any innovation in the creativity of Malaysian films?
There is, because there's a lot of independent people now. Technology has made it in such a way that has democratized the process.
Right. But what about in terms of story? Like, say, for example, right, they completely revolutionized the whole vampire genre, or what it used to be in Dracula, and right now it's like completely something else.
I would totally argue against
Twilight.
That. You know, so many people ask me about
Abomination.
Twilight. To me, I'm like, Buffy did what Twilight did 10 years ago and did it a ton better. You know, so screw fucking, what's his name? Cullen something? Fucking glittering son of a bitch.
Will we ever get
You know how many
to a
comics
point
there are where Buffy kills him? And Blade, there's a Blade comic where Blade kills that bastard. You know? The bad guy in season 8 of Buffy in the comics is named Twilight. I don't think that's a coincidence. You know?
What are the chances of we seeing a Pontianak
revolutionizing? I don't know, because the thing is the indie guys are kind of.
Why won't we even get a chance to see something like that?
I think we will. I think we're going up in that direction because the
whole
studios
new genre
now,
about toyos and orang minyak. And
I think that's going to happen, because right now what you have is a large number of the movies, the mainstream movies that are coming out, are still from the old wave of filmmakers. The new wave, they're starting to give the new wave guys a chance. You know. And when you look at the indie filmmakers in these different waves, the first wave of James Lee, Ami Muhammad, Bernard Choli, Tan Chun Mui, Ho Yu Hang, all these people, they came from that very artistic background, It's like, these stories are not being told, And they might not follow the basic plot structure, anything, They might be based in mood, they're inspired by completely different references, and maybe not everyone will get it, but it's something different. That's what they came in with, and some of them went different ways. Like James Lee, you can see he can combine both sides. Other ones they just like straight up. You know what? I'm just going to another country which is going to appreciate this stuff. But that was the first wave, which paved the way, completely paved the way. My wave was the wave that grew up on Indiana Jones and Jaws and Star Wars and Back to the Future. We grew up with that 80s reference of pop culture and, movies that were done by the studio, but at the same time, were good studio movies, and we were also influenced by the independent films as well, Like me, for example, if you ask me about Jean-Luc Godard's films, I'd be like, well, they're in black and white mostly. But if you ask me about Weekend at Bernie's, I can break down Weekend at Bernie's for you, like you read about. So that's our wave, and which brings a more, pop culture sensibility and very straightforward storytelling style and stuff like that. But just something more. We like the idea of entertainment, but we're not doing it for the sake of money. We like entertainment because we like entertainment. And then you have the current wave. This is the wave of young filmmakers who, like my wave, we were there when the technology was growing. These guys are here when the technology was there, right? And it's a very different approach as well. They're more technically proficient because they come out straight from the womb grabbing an iPhone. YouTube exists, Vimeo, HD is right there off the bat. Video editing is democratized. all of it. So the standards of quality is so much higher. You know, I was talking to Jordan the other day, my friend who does CGI and animation, and he was saying how it kills him that he's looking up tutorials on certain things to do in 3D and After Effects, and the person doing the tutorial is 12 years old. You know? It's like, this kid knows more than me. I was around when it was on a freaking Macintosh. You know? But that's the thing, and that is that new wave.
Yeah.
Which are making much more technically proficient films. You know, combining CGI with real life, and the approach to storytelling is very different as well. When I was judging the BMW Shorties last year, I was like, there was literally like really bad, terrible movies, yes. But there were an equal amount of incredibly well done ones. And they're not well done and they've got a whole crew and everything. No, they're well done. They're done in the same kind of situations as maybe when I started up, except that the technology and the know-how is so much better. You know, and especially the guy that won. Like, I've waxed lyrical about this director Quek, about a short film Guang, so much because it deserves it. You know? And you watch that and it's like, you wouldn't expect that 10 years ago unless it's from some really rich kid, you know, whose parents are like, here's $10,000 to make a short film. And I'm like, I'm sure this was done on favors and help. And it's technically proficient, the storytelling's brilliant, you know. And that is this wave, the current wave right now. And I look at this current wave with jealousy completely. Because I'm like, are you serious, you guys? What? I used to edit on VHS, you bastards! Oh, but yeah, it's that's how things are going. And these people, this current wave, are getting their foot in. You know, I got a call from one of the major studios because they're building up like a smaller arm for just like the smaller movies. Because even the bigger studios are understanding, okay, there's something happening here. And I think that is a great idea because Hollywood does that as well. You have Sony Pictures and then you have Sony Classics and you have Sony, you know, the other ones, you know, the smaller studios are, okay, this is for the little independent films.
The skunk works.
Yeah. Stuff like that, little Lionsgate type films, you know, and I'm seeing studios over here are starting to adopt that. There's still a long way to go, you know, because there are still a lot of perceptions that need to be addressed. Like, for example, relationship status. Even if I wanted it to be wajib tayang, I couldn't because it's not printed on film. You know, now that to me is annoying because, you know, like, this isn't the 80s anymore.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
the 90s, or even the early 2000s. You don't have to just show a movie on film.
Yes, yeah.
You know, ours was projected on HD. It looks fine. You know, it looks so much better than Ciplak, which is projected on digi-beta tape. It wasn't digi-beta, it was just Betacam tape, you know? And I honestly, like, I can't find fault in the projection.
So do you feel
but it's not considered a movie because it's not printed on film. And that is a perception that needs to be fixed.
So do you feel that the industry is behind? I mean,
I feel
the
that
big guys that's actually holding forth of our movie industry, right?
I think the guys...
They're the ones who are setting all the standards. Do you feel that?
All the guys at the top. And you could say this about other things in the country as well.
Right.
But all the guys at the top, I'm sorry, dudes, but, you know, you're old and crusty. And there's nothing wrong with being old and crusty. I have a lot of old and crusty friends, and I love them to bits. But those old and crusty dudes... I shouldn't say crusty, actually. They're not crusty at all. Just the more senior guys. The thing that they know how to make themselves relevant. They keep themselves in tune with what's happening and up to date. You know? What works in the 80s does not work now.
Right.
Some TV stations, and this is a fact, some TV stations still check on the standards on which... let's say if I shot something, right? And I pass it to a TV station. They still judge the quality of the video based on rules set by the BBC in the 80s. Now, television in the 80s, a TV in the 80s was what? The CRT, like it is this huge box.
Aquarium.
You know, those rules were set because those things couldn't show the full range of colors. They couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. You had to...
Limitations, yeah.
You had to accept that. That's why
Compensate
television
that,
was shot that way.
Right.
You know? And now television is different. Our TVs are different. We all have HD TVs practically, or at least an LCD TV. You know, and even the standard definition TVs are still a lot more better designed. So why are we still using the rules from the BBC in the 80s? Because even the BBC don't use that anymore. You know?
Yeah. What about piracy? How is it? Will it hamper the industry? Apart from right now, we know that in terms of standards, in terms of
piracy, in terms of local industry, I think yes and no. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I always felt like this about piracy. On the one hand, stuff like sharing online and all that stuff. I'm one of those guys who, when I would go back in Napster, right? Yes, kids, there was this thing called Napster. That's how all these things came out. Back in the Napster days, I was on the side of Napster more than Metallica. Because when it comes to music, it's the same concept as like, you got the CD, it's like, hey, I'll make you a mixtape. You copy it to a tape, someone else listens to it. Because the next thing the other person does, if they really enjoy it, they buy the CD. If you really enjoy something, you buy it. You know? With film, I follow the same principle. If I really enjoy those movies or whatever, I'll go pay for it in the cinema, I'll buy the DVD or whatever. Not everybody thinks that way. You know? A lot of people are very content with even a really bad cinema copy. As long as they get to see it, and that's that.
Yeah.
You know, and film costs a lot more money. Bearing that in mind, though, at the same time, you know, like, piracy can sometimes help artists. You know, when they wanted to bring in, what was it called, SOPA? That thing? Yeah. And then a whole bunch of people like, no, don't do this.
Yeah. Protest against it.
Because and it's true, because like Andy Samberg and his stuff, you know, YouTube fucking made his other stuff. He's got SNL, but YouTube really helped. You take that away and it's like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, because fans will buy originals. And one thing that I think the local film industry has going for it, and a lot of people don't realize, is that Malaysian audiences want to feel pride, you know, in their product. You know, there's this assumption that Malaysian audiences in general are stupid. You know, there's an assumption that all audiences in general are stupid. You know, and to me it's like, well, if you treat them like idiots, they're gonna act like idiots. And if there's one thing that I noticed when I released Relationship Status, because I was being a lot more social online with the movie to try and help promote it, because we couldn't afford any advertising. One thing I realized, because I never expected the Malay-speaking market to really like the movie or be interested in the movie, but they were. And that's when I realized, looking at reactions to Songlap and, you know, to Bunuhan, that Malaysian audiences want something to be proud of. If they are proud of it, they will support it to the end. They will buy the original DVDs, you know? If they don't think much of it, they don't feel any need to buy an original, you know? If it's like, oh, is this one of those typical, like, horror films lah? You know, the typical, okay, just buy the pirated one lah, you know? There's nothing that makes you feel like, why should, you know, that you're like, oh no, I have to own this because it's an original copy. A lot of things that have been done to help battle that now. When I made Ciplak, to buy an original DVD cost like $100.
Right.
And now they're priced properly. You know, in prices like, I can afford this. Half the time I go into Speedy, like, I can afford this. And Malaysian DVDs of Malaysian films are priced affordably as well, like $19.90. You know, it's a difference of $9.90 usually between that and buying it pirated. Might as well buy it original.
Yeah, that's right.
And that helps. But to me, nothing helps battling piracy more than making the audiences want to buy original. You know? If you give them no incentive to buy an original copy, why should they?
That's true.
You know?
And technology allows us to do it now.
Yeah.
You can, for once, get really close to your audience.
Exactly. I mean, if I could... if the American pay-per-view online channels allowed me to pay, I would pay. In fact, it bugs me that I can't.
Yes.
I'm like, you're making me torrent this because this show is not coming out here. You know? And one day when I go to the States, I'll buy the box set. But I could have just paid for it right now. You won't let me. I don't like you. You know? That's the thing. I mean, that's how they're set up because of... I know it's not their fault because the copyright issues and this and that.
That's right.
There's a lot of issues when you want to make it global, unfortunately. We're still in a real world. But, yeah, I think nothing helps piracy more than actually making stuff that people want to see. You know? Because then people start feeling guilty that they own a pirated copy. Yeah. You know?
They are. Then when they become personally attached to it.
that helps more than anything. If there's no incentive for them to buy an original copy, why should they?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and you know, having said, we say, oh, please buy originals, and the first question an audience will ask is like, why? Give me a reason why. You give them a reason to buy originals, they will buy originals. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why people still continue to buy original Star Wars
Yeah.
is simply because they are emotionally invested
Exactly.
into the entire property.
Exactly. You know, original. You'll only buy something fake when you don't care about it.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't care about the value of something, then you'll buy something that has no value. You know, I won't buy a fake Fender guitar. You know, because it's like, why should I? You know, I'll buy like a different brand, and I'll look up the brand, see, okay, is this brand quality? You know, but I won't buy a Fender spelled PH. You know, you want to buy something where like you have trust in it, you have faith in it.
Sure.
You know, and that's what I've always felt. In terms of the laws and the guidelines of pricing, the pricing was always the biggest issue. They've fixed that a lot. But there's so many more things that video stores, for example, can do to help curb piracy. And one of them is just having a good store. If you go to a pirated DVD store, the amount of film knowledge that these pirates have is insane.
Much greater than if you would walk into Speedy or something like
exactly.
that.
You walk into Speedy and you ask for like, do you have Demolition Man? Apa? You know? So many times, and the way the DVDs are arranged in racks in Speedy, it's so difficult to browse.
De-order.
Yeah. You know, you go into a pirate store, you have alphabetical, you have quality type, you have genre, you have, sometimes they split them up by actors or directors. You know, they will SMS you, oh, new box set of Fellini films. You're like, what? How do you know about Fellini? How did you know that I would enjoy this? You know, they actually go out of their way to know their product so that they can sell that product. A clerk at Speedy, I can assure you, knows nothing about movies. They're just there to be a clerk. You know, and if you're going to run a video store, to me that pains me because I'm a big fan of movies. And I'm like, if you're going to run a video store, then you better know your damn product. Simple as that.
Hence the movie Clerks.
Yes!
So, top three things you would like to share with someone who wants to go into film production.
Top 3 things? Share knowledge, not whatever wealth I've come up with. Top 3 things. Okay. If you want to get into like independent film production?
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to go, actually this applies across the board. Try and learn everything. You know? Even if you're not a master of it, try and learn everything, learn the process of everything. You know? So that when push comes to shove, if the only person you can rely on is yourself, you have yourself to rely on. So learn about cameras, learn about editing, learn about sound mixing, learn about it all. Even if you don't end up using it, just learn about it. And if you become proficient in it, even better. And if you go into the mainstream, something like, well, what if I want to go straight into the mainstream? Well, it is still incredibly helpful. Like when you understand what a cameraman's job is, what a cinematographer's job is, you as a director can be like, okay, I want something like this, da-da-da-da. I'm thinking maybe a 1.2 over there, but it's up to you. I have this angle, this angle, this angle. His job is automatically easier. Because I've seen some directors like, they'll go for a close-up. They're like, okay. And then after that, now we'll go for a wide. And straight away, the cinematographer's job is screwed. Because he didn't know what the next shot was. He didn't know how many shots he was going to do. And some of these directors don't even know how many shots they want to do. They're thinking about it on the spot. I make up a lot of shit on the spot, but I make it up in a set. You know, I'll go to my crew like, okay, so wide here, 2 close-ups there, 2 close-ups there, and maybe a close-up with that thing. Okay, and then they know, okay, we need to set up for this, we also need to set up for this. By knowing how their job works, I can make their job easier.
Right.
And it's also, when you go into mainstream, by knowing how other people's job works, they can't fuck you over. You know? If you can do it quicker than them, then they're not doing their job because they're supposed to be professionals in that. So that helps, number 1. Number 2, that's the big one. Number 2, be honest. When it comes to the independent stuff, if you are making something purely for the sake of making it, you're not tied down by a producer or a financer, to do anything, then tell the stories that you want to tell.
Mm.
Because when you start talking to studios, TV stations and everything, that's when you have to make sacrifices to the story. You know, and when it's a personal story, when it's something that you really hold to your heart, there's a vision that you have, unless you know they're going to let you do it, keep that to yourself. You know? Because there have been so many times where I brought something that I felt very personally attached to,
When
and
there's
then
an
either see
investor
it,
involved and all
you
that,
either see it ripped to
producer involved.
shreds, or you see it questioned, or changes made, and it's not the thing that you want. So there's something that you really want to tell, and you don't think anyone's going to be able to let you tell it, then tell it yourself. And that is also the best opportunity, because those are the stories that no one gets to see. You know, that's where things become the most individual, the most unique.
And we have Star Wars, and we have
exactly.
Titanic too.
Titanic's not that
Not
unique,
really.
but very, very clever. But movies like Clerks, for example, or Reservoir Dogs, or El Mariachi, and stuff like this. When you are telling a story yourself, you have full control, you know, and that gives you a story that no one else might have ever seen, and then that might get you noticed. Because once you get into the mainstream door, unless you are Christopher Nolan or James Cameron or Steven Spielberg, you don't get to tell your own stories. I should probably talk louder because of the damn rain.
Yeah.
Number 3. I can't think of a number 3. Help me out here. Number 3. Always wipe front to back. No. What?
Nice to your crew.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Be nice to your crew. Be nice to the people around you, the people that help you out.
Right.
You know, when you start off, you're going to need a lot of help. Do not be a dick director. You know, just because you watch some documentary about how, like, oh, he ruled with an iron fist, blah, blah. Newsflash, that guy was a fucking genius who got to his place. You're starting up, you have no reason to act that way.
Yeah.
You know, you're calling in a ton of favors, right? And make sure you pay back those favors. You know, be grateful, be helpful. You know, there are some people who direct and like, oh, is this ready yet? Is this ready yet? You should be da-da-da-da. And, you know, and as opposed to like just understand that other people are working as well. Understand their jobs. And you'd be surprised how many people will help if you ask. Actually, can I just add one more?
Sure.
Okay, number 4. And this is one that it seems so obvious, but no one ever does it. Ask. You know, ask questions, ask for favors, ask for help. Ask if you can get something distributed, just ask. So many times in my Q&A, people ask questions like, how did you get this movie into TGV? And my answer is very simple, I asked. How did you get this actress? I asked. You know? People think it's rocket science, some magical movie.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's the simple, basic thing of
Just pick up damn phone and ask.
The worst thing that'll happen is they say no. That is the worst thing that'll happen. It's not that they'll say like, no, and you know what, for the record, I think you're a piece of shit. They're not going to do that. They're just going to say no. So, you know, it doesn't hurt. They say no, ask someone else. But ask. You'd be surprised how many people say yes. People will say no, but some people will say yes. So just ask, you know. That's ask.
Okay. Okay, Khairil, we got really geeky.
Yes.
Historically, your interview is going to be the longest interview.
Excellent.
I'll probably get tons of hate mail.
Excellent.
And trolls.
I love trolls.
But okay, final question.
Okay.
Where do you think you
know
are?
you can trim this all down.
Yeah, then it's going to take hours of figuring out what to trim off.
Pass me the footage, I can get my editor to edit it for you.
Okay, so last question. Where do you think you are in your career? 0 or hero?
Can you answer? I can't answer this.
He's slightly better than your average Joe.
Slightly better. I'm like, you know, I have no idea. I wouldn't call myself a hero. I wouldn't say I was at 0. I'd say I was getting there. You know, I mean, it's not like I still have bad financial days. You know, it's not to the point where I'm not worrying about money. That's the point that everyone wants to be, where they don't worry about money. I'm not there yet. You know, there's still times I'm like, shit, I need to make some cash. You know, but I'm happy for the most part. I'm getting to do what I love, which at the moment is good enough, but I do want to push it further. But yeah, I wouldn't call myself a hero. I'm still miles away to getting to the point where I'm saying, okay, you know what, I'm successful. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, if the rest of my life is like this, I could actually deal with it, you know. But I'm trying to push for things to evolve, get better. And it's also because I can't sit down in one place for too long. I get bored. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really hard question to ask. Man.
Okay, before we wrap up,
really hard.
Do you want to plug anything? You want to share with us anything?
Oh yeah. When does this go up?
I don't know. In about in a week's time?
Within this month. Okay. The relationship status DVD will be coming out.
How do we get
around the end of the month or early next month, depending on how I manage to schedule everything. I haven't released the details yet, but the best way to keep updated is to go to the relationship status site, which is relationshipstatusmovie.tumblr.com, or to check on my blog, KhairilMBahar.com. You know, and if you want to find out anything that's being updated or any kind of info, I post a ton of stuff up there. So yeah, KhairilMBahar.com is where you can find out pretty much anything. But that DVD is going to be coming out soon, with a few other things that'll come out around the same time. But I can't really announce that yet. So yeah, definitely want to plug that. I want to plug my band, Rollin' Sixes. You can find out more at rollinsixers.com, ROLLINSIXERS.com, and on Facebook as well. And yeah, there's a Facebook page for me as well, sadly. But yeah, check out the band. We have a first album that came out last year. Recorded it ourselves, recorded it in this house. So if you're into blues or rock and roll, hopefully you'll dig that. We've got a couple of gigs lined up as well, so check out the site. Or if you want, especially for gigs, the Facebook page will be more updated as well, so check it out there. Also, one of the other things that I do is help out on this site called wearemalaysianmade.com. So do check that out. It's anything Malaysian made in the creative endeavors we pimp out over there. We also do a bunch of screenings as well, so you'll find out the dates from there as well. And it is the home to my podcast with Amelia Chen called Whamcast, where that's a podcast where like it'll alternate between us talking about what's happening in the local creative arts scene and perhaps making fun of it, and as well as interviewing people from the creative arts scene. Like recently we had the cast members of the play It's the End of the World Now Run Screaming. We had Tony Yusuf, we had Susan Lancaster, Samad, all different types of people. So yeah, check out that podcast. It is long like this podcast, because you know my favorite podcast is the Kevin Smith podcast,
which is equally
and
long.
Those ones. Oh, I love them, you know, and there is no
the
structure.
longer the better.
Oh yes, absolutely. Because you know, like some people are like, oh, why can't it be a 15-minute podcast? I'm like, just listen to the radio then.
Yeah,
there are plenty of great interviews on the radio. If you want to hear people rambling for an hour and hear an interesting conversation, then Whamcast. You know, especially the latest episode, because we talk about Japanese cock. So download episode 22 where we talk about Japanese cock. So there you go. What other Malaysian podcast talks about Japanese cock?
Rooster we're talking about, right?
Huh? A rooster?
Rooster.
Yes, a Japanese rooster.
A Japanese rooster.
A pixelated Japanese rooster. You know, so if you like pixelated Japanese rooster, check out Whamcast. But yeah, I think those are all. Is there anything else to plug? Oh? No. Not yet. Not at the moment, no. That's about it for now. So check those out. KhairilMBahar.com, rollinsixers.com, wearemalaysianmade.com. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Take care.
Tahukah diandalkan semua yang lepas terus diingatkan. Mengapa kabur